Hey guys, welcome to another Creator Hangout with Kickstarter, a weekly series of live Q&As with creators from our community. My name is Maris Kreisman, and I'm a publishing outreach lead at Kickstarter, which means that I work closely with Kickstarter creators to make great book, magazine, and journalism and other writing projects. And I'm so happy to introduce Martin McClellan to you. Martin is a designer and novelist living in Seattle. He's co-founder of the Seattle Review of Books, which just launched recently, and senior UX designer for Breaking News. His first novel, California 4 O'Clock, is being released in September 2015, very soon, funded by a successful Kickstarter campaign. Welcome.
Thank you. Really pleased to be here.
We will be taking questions live here on Google+, Facebook, and also on Twitter via @KickstarterTips. So while we're waiting for questions to come in, why don't I get us started?
Okay.
So Martin, I can't wait to read your novel. Can
Thank
you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. Well, so it's set in the 50s, and it's about a woman named Dolores Sargent who is about to turn 30 and leaves her lover in New York to go back to her parents' home in Los Angeles. Her father is a pinup painter, and she falls in love with his model and starts taking pictures of her, and a lot of drama ensues.
And so I know you've been a Kickstarter supporter for quite a while, and you've backed lots of projects in a whole variety of categories. How did you decide to do a project for your book?
Well, as you said, I've backed a lot of Kickstarters, and my first Kickstarter that I backed was a writing project, Robin Sloan's novella, and I just thought it was a great concept to go directly to people. And I've been struggling with writing the book for a number of years, and also attending the XOXO Festival in Portland, which has a lot of Kickstarter involvement and people who are doing Kickstarters, and just was really inspired by people kind of going direct. So I kind of marched towards doing it by telling people, I think I'm going to do a Kickstarter. And you know, nobody ever said that's a really terrible idea. Well, one person did, but that's another story. But they you know, just kind of went slowly towards it until I gained up enough steam and momentum of telling everybody I was going to do it. And then I decided it was just there. I had to kind of do it. And one of the things that kind of pushed me over the edge was I told myself as a personal goal I was going to publish my first novel by my 45th year, and I turned 46 the day the Kickstarter closed. So it was kind of a, I'm going to do this.
Amazing. So writing the book must have been a kind of solitary act.
Yes.
But of course, self-publishing requires a lot of outside help too. And I'm wondering, how did you manage that? How did you find the people who could help you? How did you know who was right? What did you have them do? Tell me all about it.
Well, I liked getting a lot of information and different opinions on kind of what to do. You know, I reached out to some early readers too with the book, and worked with editors, of course, to make it a professional novel. I wanted it to be as good as it could be when I published it. And in getting advice from people, you know, most people were very excited about it. It's not like the stigma of self-publishing used to be, where 20 years ago, if you were self-publishing a book, it was because there was no way you could sell it. And the sales right now for a novel like mine, which is a little bit niche, and it's a little bit, it deals with a lot of things such as you know, like it's about the 50s and history, and the main character is a lesbian, and, you know, I'm a straight white guy writing it. So I think there was, you know, for when I was reaching out to agents, I wasn't getting much response. And I think that there's a number of reasons why that could be. Of course, the first reason could be that the novel's not very good. And, you know, like that's got to be on the table right away. But, you know, I felt like I believe in the work, and I think it's strong, and I think that it's certainly up to the quality of a professionally published novel from a large house. So I decided to kind of go ahead and do it myself. Most of the feedback I got was really positive, and a lot of writers who were very encouraging along the way. The one person who was discouraging was actually a professional writer who's done very well. And I went to her because I knew that she would kind of give me some slack and say, no, you should go a more traditional route, and here's why. And I wanted to hear that argument and measure it against the other ones I got. And I don't think she was necessarily wrong, but I do think that in my case, she was wrong. Like the argument that the traditional route is the best way to go, I think is good if you've gone the traditional route and it's successful for you.
Right.
But for someone like me, like I wanted to sell 300 to 500 books. That was my goal. And so a traditional publisher is going to look at that and sneeze.
No.
There's no way, right? So this allowed me to do something smaller, and also to make kind of a bespoke, more attentive item. I was able to hire an illustrator, Vicky Norino, to do a lot of illustrations with it, and work with a letterpress printer to do one of the prints, and work with a lettering artist on the cover, and work with hire editors. So the Kickstarter allowed me to spread the wealth around and kind of do some kind of cool things.
And what did your editors do?
So I had two editors. One did kind of a development edit with me, and she worked with making sure that the plot worked and along the way, and I wasn't making any really boneheaded mistakes. And then a second editor did kind of a tight copy edit. He gave me a lot of feedback on the specifics of, this doesn't sound right for the 50s. Let's do a little research into this,
right.
As well as a lot of like cleaning up grammatical issues, which are not my strong point. Making sure that the dialogue tags were in the correct order and consistent throughout. The kind of things that a professional editor is going to bring that I've never had experience with and needed that help with. Sure.
And how did you find them?
So the first editor was actually my sister, who's a professional editor. And
wonderful, that helps.
And the second editor I found through recommendation. I had talked to, there's a editing company in town, Sterling Editing, that's owned by the novelist Nicola Griffith and her wife, Kelly Estridge. And I talked to Kelly about doing some editing with me. And but when it came time to actually copy edit the book, the editor that I actually had lined up had dropped out. And so I went to them and said, I know you probably don't have time. Do you have anyone you could recommend? And they recommended someone. And he was great.
Fantastic. And so tell us a little bit about where in the production process you are now.
So let's see, there's a couple things happening right now. The first thing is that the book is at the printer and being printed, and I'm just waiting to hear back on this is when it's going to be off the press and this is when we're going to ship it to you. So that's very exciting.
Very exciting.
And it's a little nerve-wracking and just kind of waiting and waiting. The second thing that happened is that we had, for the upper level of backers, there was some prints. So there was a print set for one level, and then a boxed set, which has like the book's going to be in a box and has the prints as well. So the letterpress printer in Los Angeles just finished printing them and is sending them to Vicky Norino in Toronto so she can sign them. So they are like right now jetting through the air internationally. Very exciting. Very.
Tell me a little bit more now that you mentioned the prints. Tell me about your reward structure and how you decided to go with the very compact set of rewards that you did.
Well, I have found myself on some Kickstarters being confused by the rewards, and so I wanted to avoid that as much as possible. I think that I actually did cause a little confusion, which I'll get to in a sec.
Okay.
But, like, my goal was to keep it as simple as possible. So originally, when I was going to launch with an ebook option and a print book option, and I got some good advice from a friend who said, "You don't want to make an ebook; you want to make a print book. Why even put that in there?" So I think that I probably could have picked up a few more backers with an ebook, but I decided that I was just going to I'm just going to do, this is going to be a print project and kind of just focus it really tightly. So there was no confusion. Well, I'd introduced some confusion when I said, there were enough people that were emailing me saying, I think you should have an ebook, that I said, hey, back me for $1, follow the project, and let me know if you want an ebook. But the wording was a little poor. And so I think people thought, oh, I'm going to get an ebook if I back this. So I am going to make an ebook for a few of my backers, just custom one-offs, so they can get that. And that's fine.
Fantastic. And how will you let them know?
I'll email directly and contact them. There's going to be, I sent out a survey earlier just to say, hey, with that group of backers, and this was really great to be able to target just a group of backers in the back end after the campaign was over. Say, hey, you know, there was some confusion about this. If you expected to get an ebook, will you please let me know? And had a little survey. And so people who are expecting it, let me know, and I'll just contact them directly. And
cool. And tell me about the process of doing updates, because you've been so vigilant about that. And I know that you're into sending an update to your backers about once a week, right?
Yep, I try to do it weekly when it's over the past few months where things have been happening less. Excuse me.
Sure.
It's been about every 2 weeks or so. But that was inspired, I say, by Jack Cheng, who did a novel project, and really his project was very inspirational to kind of the form of mine. And he was really good about just sending a note every week. This is where I am. This is what's happening. And I really appreciated it. You know, sometimes I wouldn't read them, but I could always go back and reference them.
Sure.
And I would rather know than not know. So it's always frustrating as a backer when, hey, wasn't that supposed to happen around now? Or, and I don't expect my backers to track my project. That's my job, to kind of keep them informed. So I wanted to make sure that was. And then since I'm writing a piece every week, I tried to make it kind of fun and interesting and worth reading, and try to bring in some other stuff. You know, I followed some.
Like what?
Well, like looking at an aspect of the book that I was interested in, such as, you know, one of the themes is photography versus painting. So trying to look at kind of art in the 50s and pinup culture, and, you know, some of the inspirations for why I wrote the book in the first place. Which is that I had 3 friends who, women who independently of each other, didn't even know each other. All 3 of them went and had pinup pictures taken. So one was kind of more boudoir-like, and she did it for her husband at the time. And one was very kind of fun pinup, and her boyfriend bought this kind of package for her, and they did it in a diner, and it was really elegant and fantastic. And then one was a group of girlfriends who got together, and 2 of them are photographers. They're like, we're all going to dress up tonight and take pictures. And they just had like a blast doing it. And I thought about that as something that women kind of do for themselves, that the pinup has kind of changed. And especially when Playboy took over in the 50s, I think it kind of changed from being a thing for men to view women. And now it's more of a thing for women to kind of claim for themselves. Sure. I like that. So.
And so how does it come across in the book? How did you use that idea for your book?
Well, you know, I was, again, a straight white guy writing women and writing a lesbian in the 50s. So it was hard, actually, I wanted it to not be, well, I guess like the first thing that people think of when they think of like dudes and lesbians is kind of like, you know, Chandler on Friends joking about how sexy lesbians are. And, you know, obviously that is not what I wanted at all. So my main focus was making just real characters who are flawed and imperfect, and trying to do the best they can in their lives, and who are also just full people. They're sexual, but they're not like, as much as it's about pinups, they're not like commodified. They're people who are kind of doing their own thing. And so I tried to kind of keep the balance there while keeping the plot and making it interesting without it being too like, ugh, you know, it's a dude writing about, you know, kind of sexy things, which has a tendency to be, you know, could be really bad.
Of course. And so how did you convey all of this information about the novel you've written to your Kickstarter audience, to when your project was live? How did you get this point across?
That was really hard. Because you know, if I could explain why I wrote the novel, I'd write the novel, kind of. It's, you know, the yes. novel is the reason I wrote it. So like the marketing part of it and condensing that story to like a soundbite or something, that was the hardest part for me. And that actually took a lot of tries. I like wrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it, and just worked and tried to put on like this hat of, let's pretend I work at a publishing house, and I'm the marketing person, and I need to describe this book. But that was probably one of the hardest parts for me, is to distill that language down.
And yet you did on your Kickstarter page, and you had a great video. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The video was really fun. I tried to kind of make it really entertaining for myself while I was making it. So I shot it in my little studio, and I set up, kind of made the set as nice as I could. So I put a lot of stuff behind it that kind of entertained me. And then I recorded probably 10 takes of the whole thing. And it's I kind of took my cues from a lot of the YouTube stars these days who do really tight edits. And so I did a lot of really tight, quick edits because I could barely get a sentence out coherently, put together on aggregate. I was able to take this one little second here and these two little seconds there and make it into something that kind of worked, I think. But, I'm not a person that is used to being on camera. So it was, I had to kind of work at it to try to make it as good as I could.
Good. Well, you did a great job.
Thank you.
And so tell me a little bit about outreach that you did before you launched your campaign, during, and what are you doing now to get the word out about your book?
So that's I found that the frustrating thing after launching was that it was really hard to let people know that that I had a Kickstarter going on. The first person who backed me within seconds. Is a friend of mine, and he got Martin just launched a project on Kickstarter, and that was great. So like having the Kickstarter system kick in immediately started getting me some traction. But beyond that, like how did I spread the word to my family and my friends and the people who I thought would back me? I did a lot of Twitter updates. I did a lot of Facebook updates. When Facebook now doesn't, it used to be that you could look up everything on Facebook and you could go chronologically through and catch everything. And now Facebook does a lot of hiding and making sure that, they see what you think is interesting. So my posts were getting lost quite a bit. So I did a lot of direct outreach where I was just DMing friends on Facebook and saying, hey, I don't know if you saw it, but I have this project going on. I'd love it if you could take a look. And doing that is where I got my best response, actually. That's great.
And so what are you doing now for in preparation for the book launch?
So I'm going to do a reading in Seattle in early October. I'm going to do a reading in Bellingham, Washington, where I'm from, and I have some backers there, and also in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where I have some backers and family there as well. I would love to do one in Los Angeles, but because this is a self-published book, and because I'm not beholden to a particular schedule, I'm going to see if I can do some outreach and see if I can build a community down there before I kind of go down. But I think that would be a good thing. The book is set all in LA, and I would love to see it go down there and do something down there.
That sounds great. Do you feel like you reached an audience outside of your existing community with your Kickstarter project?
I did, and that was really fantastic for me. But the base community was people who know me, friends of family, friends of friends. That I would say for anybody considering doing a Kickstarter, you really have to work your community, and you have to be a salesperson and make sure everybody knows. I was at work. I was talking to actually a person who I'd known for years, and we ended up working in the same place. And I mentioned, oh yeah, blah, 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 my Kickstarter. And she said, what Kickstarter? So she didn't even know. And I had to be like, oh, well, let me tell you about it. And then she became a backer. And so it really is like everybody you meet, it's almost like, hi, I'm doing a Kickstarter. Did you know about it? And that's necessarily an uncomfortable role for somebody who's not used to doing like direct sales or feeling, I don't want to feel too markety, but you have to, like, that's the gig. You have to get out there and kind of hustle for your project and make sure people know about it. So I did reach some people outside of my circles, but mostly it was through friends of friends and, their circles. So. Sure.
In terms of publicity now, let's talk a little bit about your new venture.
Oh, yeah.
The Seattle Review of Books.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about that, and also tell us how you think maybe this jibes with what you're doing now.
So one of the reasons I did this Kickstarter is because I love this idea of community, of being part of the writing community and the publishing community and the book world. I've been a part of it as a reader and an observer for my whole life, and I wanted to be there as a creator too. So part of that was kind of shoehorned with my friend Paul Constant, who was the books editor of The Stranger here in Seattle. And he left that role and took another job where he wasn't writing about books. And so I was teasing him and said, hey, you should start the Seattle Review of Books. And he said, yeah, that would be great. Ha, ha, ha. And then we were having dinner, and I was like, I wonder if SeattleReviewOfBooks.com is taken. And I looked it up, and nobody had taken this yet. And so then we just started like, well, wouldn't it be interesting if, and what about, and we found out that like our ideas about what we wanted to do were simpatico just down the line. Like we both believe that writing is a community and reading is a community act, and that there is a huge community of writers and readers and book lovers in Seattle that was not being served well. There is some media. Seattle Times has a great book reviewer, but just we wanted more coverage. So we launched Seattle Review of Books. We launched it earlier in August, and we've just gotten a really nice response. People seem to really like it, and that's very pleasing. Paul has a place to write reviews, which if you read his reviews, I'm just so thrilled writing again, and I'm writing reviews as well. It's our goal is to represent the average Seattle person's shelf, the reader shelf. So you'll see a graphic novel next to like the big important book of the year next to like some genre things, and that's how real people read. And we wanted to represent that on the site and do a very wide breadth of kind of topics and interests.
Will there be coverage of your novel on that site?
No, there won't.
Okay.
Because that would be ethically.
Separation of churches.
Yeah, exactly. We will mention when I have a reading or something like that, and we mentioned this event on the site, and so there will be some, but like there won't be a review or anything, and that's I think that's actually very good. So we like our shoot for pretty high journalistic standards on the site, and I think that would be a little unethical to try to.
Are you reaching out for any review coverage at all for the book?
That's a good question, and I haven't yet, other than a few people during the Kickstarter to talk about this idea. I was trying to pitch a story to a few different people about this idea of novelists who are working on their own and starting their own projects and stuff. And some people were kind of biting and interested, but wanted to see my book first. So I'm going to reach out to them and see.
That certainly makes sense.
And then I'll probably send out a few for review copies to see locally. But mostly I'm going to be setting up California4o'clock.com is going to be a place you can go and buy the book. And hopefully keep talking about it online, and hopefully people will find it and read a little bit and find it interesting enough to pick up a copy.
How did you handle an actual sample of the work before you actually have a copy of the book? How do you let the internet see?
So I did a couple things. I put chapters up on Medium. Medium's a great publishing platform. It's free, and the layout's really nice. Those chapters have changed a little bit because it was pre my final edit, but it was enough to give people a sample of what the book was like and what my work was like. And then for fun too, in one of my updates, I did a reading of the first chapter and included that. I don't think I want to listen to my voice reading the entire book. If I did an audiobook, I'd hire somebody, a professional voice actor. But it was kind of a fun experiment to kind of say, okay, well, here's some more of what it's like, and thank you for backing and things like that. So
that's great. And so we've already talked about the slight miscommunication about ebooks, but is there anything else that you wish you had done differently during the campaign for the book?
It's hard to say that I wish I'd done something differently, because the Kickstarter was successful, and I feel like that exceeded my expectations. I was really pleased. I know that not everybody who runs a Kickstarter is always successful. You have to work hard, and not everybody finds the audience. So in one sense, I'm just so grateful that I made it and really proud of what I did. And so I can't say that I wish I'd done a lot differently. But that said, of course I made mistakes. Going in, I don't think I realized how much it would consume my thought of every moment of every day while the Kickstarter was live.
How many times a day did you check?
More like how many times an hour, really. And unlike some of the tech projects that are backed by so many people, I was small enough that I could keep notifications on my phone. Somebody backed it, and every time I got a backer alert, my gut reaction was, oh, thank God, I gotta make this, and even when I knew I was gonna make it, it was still so thrilling to see those come through and be like, yes, I'm so happy.
And how did you keep momentum up while that was happening, while the project was live?
I tried to do updates and make sure that people knew that things were happening. I planned a series of articles that I was going to release during the book. I did some, or during the Kickstarter.
Like what?
Well, probably the biggest one that I wrote was kind of an exploration of pinups and why I was interested in the topic. So I wrote a very long Medium piece that kind of looked at the history of pinups and of kind of nudie photography and I mean, this book deals a lot with the transition between painting and photography in the mid-century, and as photography was taking on more of the literal and figurative work, and painting was taking on a more abstract role. And one of the characters of the book, this painter, Gail Sargent is his name, he is stuck in this world as kind of a quote-unquote illustrator. And although he's had a successful career, he's a little bit like Norman Rockwell would have been, where Norman Rockwell wanted to be an abstract expressionist. He wanted to paint and be seen in galleries, but here he was, this wildly successful illustrator. So, Gail Sargent has that kind of issue, and when his daughter comes and takes pictures of his model and then tries to sell them to Playboy, it's kind of causes a big rift in the family, and that kind of exploits this interest of mine, which is that transition between painting and photography. So I wrote about that, and then about my friends who went and got the pinup pictures taken, and what was my inspiration for the book.
That's great. Do you have any advice for potential Kickstarter creators who want to self-publish a book?
Do as much preparation as you can, pre-write everything that you can, not necessarily updates, which, are often reactions to things that are happening as they go. But if you write articles, query people, like if you want to try to get some press, that you have to get the word out there. During the Kickstarter, talk about it all the time, talk about it to everybody. DM your friends real notes, don't spam them, just send like everybody and friends with on Facebook real notes. Those are going to be your base supporters, and they're so important. So
that's great. And so when your books arrive, you will mail them out yourself?
I'm going to mail them out myself. So I'm going to mail out a few less than 300 books. And I'm going to spend a little time and sign each one and, do a little grateful, whatever, over it, and put some good energy in them and send them on their way, put the label on. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to get mine.
Thank you. I can't wait to send them out. It's going to be kind of thrilling.
Absolutely. So is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you want to tell the Kickstarter audience before we have to sign off? I'd just like to end with a general endorsement of Kickstarter. I just love that you have, I did a Kickstarter because I'm a true believer, and I'd seen so many people that I know do really cool things. Some of them very small, just kind of fun art projects, or, trying to raise $100 to do this fun little crazy thing. And some of them massive, some of them huge games that were very successful. And some people who've tried and failed and then tried again and tried it this way. I just love this marketplace. I love this idea that creators can go direct and try things and experiment. And this is an avenue that would not have been available to me had it not been for Kickstarter. So I'm very grateful for Kickstarter, and I can't say enough good things. I would do it again. Hooray. Well, we're very grateful to you too. So
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.